I waited, but it never came. Jimin's silent confession and the silence that echoed the sentence just slid, almost without pressure, from Jimin's mouth as he sat in the corner of the interview room whose lighting was warm and calm. I'm ready. I'm waiting. But it never came. To some, it may sound like a casual remark about time and unrealized plans. But for those who have followed BTS's journey and HYB's behind-the-scenes dynamics, especially the relationship between Jimin and Bang Si-hyuk, that sentence wasn't just a reflection, it was like a quiet whistle from an old wound that never healed, from a hope that was left hanging for too long. Since the release of Face and Like Crazy that rocked the global charts, the public seemed to be preparing for a new round of Jimin. Solo tours, personal projects, or at least a more independent presence on the global stage. But time is running. While Suga toured the world with a D-Day tour, Jungkook hit the international market with big stages and lavish collaborations. Jimin? It remains an enigma, present but not really welcome to step. How long have I been waiting? He asked inwardly, perhaps also in that gaze, a gaze that looked far out the window, past the studio lights, past the glare of the cameras, towards a place that only he could see. Fans quickly catch the signal. Social media was filled with hashtags. Hashtag Let Jimin Tour. Hashtag Where is Jimin? Hashtag Jimin deserves better. It's not the first time fandom has moved on, but this time there are different emotions. Quieter, more poignant, more mature. Jimin did not point to anyone. He is not angry, but he is also not silent. The sentence is enough. Sometimes the pressure is not from the outside, but from the people who believe in you, who also decide what happens next. That's not a complaint. It was kind of a bittersweet afterthought. And it could be, for those who are sensitive enough, it is aimed at the figure who has also called Jimin an emotional powerhouse, Bang Si-hyuk. Among the many discussions and speculations, one thing became clear. Jimin was ready. But the permission he was waiting for did not arrive. Many people began to wonder, have HYB's priorities changed? Do they judge that Jimin's emotional style and theatrical performances no longer match the tastes of a market now filled with LEDs, blind dance breaks, and bass beats? Maybe Jimin is too subtle, too quiet, too deep. But precisely therein lies its strength. His quotes are now plastered everywhere. On X, formerly Twitter, Tumblr, TikTok. Not only is writing, but it has been transformed into poetry, digital graffiti, quotes printed on hoodies and tote bags. I'm waiting, but it never came. As if those 7 words represented the disappointment of millions of voices. Fans remember vague promises at fan meetings, sweet statements in radio interviews, and maybe soon that now feel empty. While in Seoul, some fans started printing banners and sticking them on tall buildings. In Times Square, a digital billboard flashed Jimin's face with a large caption, "What are you waiting for?" Questions that are now no longer addressed only to his agency, but also to all the systems that have been holding back the pace. The most interesting? Response from industry professionals. Several choreographers and producers who had worked with her began coding on Instagram and Threads. An old video of Jimin dancing, Set Me Free PT2, was re-uploaded with a caption, "Freedom does not wait for permission." And then came a bolder speculation. What if Jimin was indeed planning everything secretly? Not as a form of defiance, but as a form of independence. An unexpected tour. Without announcement. Without a common structure. Without the promo. Maybe it's just him, the music, and those who are really listening. Maybe he never needed a big stage. Maybe he just needs some space. And now, with that one sentence, he opened the door to that room. The room he had been waiting for. Recent photos of his vacation show him sitting alone in a small cafe, staring out the window. No makeup. No flashy outfits. It is only her, in the silence that she may have learned to love. Is he changing his path? Or is it a form of despair that has reached the end? No one knows for sure. But there are vibrations that are felt. One music producer wrote on his blog, "True artists are not shaped by a system. They persist even when the system silences them." And now, Jimin's voice, albeit softly, was heard. He did not scream, did not sue. But that calmness actually made him much stronger. Because the most piercing thing is not anger, but a gently conveyed disappointment. he doesn't have to blame anyone. Because with just one sentence, he had said more than enough. And millions of people are now echoing it in their own hearts. I'm waiting. But it never came. It's not just a tour anymore. It's about recognition, about rights, about sound, about demanding space without the need to shout, and maybe about taking it upon yourself. And if it is true that Jimin is preparing something without noise, without fanfare from the huge system that usually regulates all their movements, then perhaps this is not just a solo tour. Perhaps this is a statement. It was a sign that he wasn't waiting anymore. Interestingly, it wasn't just the fans who began to read Jimin's small gestures as tacit code. Even fellow artists, who are not always vocal, seem to be starting to speak up, although not in the form of direct statements. One of the dancers who was involved in the production of Like Crazy uploaded an Instagram story with a photo of the rehearsal studios backstage with the caption, "She doesn't need permission to shine." No name is called, but all know who is meant, and this is not just a form of support. It's subtle resistance from backstage. It was as if the creative world that surrounded Jimin was secretly preparing to protect him, or maybe even already ready to work with him without the need for blessing from the center. A source in the Seoul producer community even said, Jimin could have chosen the independent path if he wanted to. He's got enough power, enough network, enough credibility, and most importantly, enough love from fans. It's not just a fan's dream anymore. This is already entering the realm of realistic possibilities. If in the past the idea of Jimin moving on his own seemed impossible, now it makes more sense than not. Moreover, if there really is pressure from within the label to postpone, save, or set the time based on the company's calendar, the question is no longer, why hasn't Jimin toured yet? But why does the system feel the need to hold it? Is it because Jimin's narrative doesn't match the global star image they sell? Is it because it sounds too personal? Too emotional? Too real? Jimin was never a product. He always felt like a human being put on stage, with all his vulnerability. And perhaps precisely because of this, he is too dangerous for corporate strategies that are now getting colder. While many other artists performed with strobe lights, explosive dancing, and showmanship that hit the limits, Jimin appeared with a low expression, slightly lowered shoulders, and a voice that seemed to sing for just one person. But the impact was felt for thousands. It's not about volume. It's about resonance. And such a resonance, one that touches slowly but leaves a lasting impression, cannot be engineered. Not to be confused. It cannot be scheduled solely for the sake of numbers in the next quarter. Jimin voiced his disappointment in a way that only someone who deeply understands this world can, and still chose tenderness. He knows how hard the system can work. He knows how priorities are shifted silently, without explanation. But he chose not to fight back with shouts. He chose simple words. I'm waiting. But it never came. That's not sarcasm. It was a confession. But in the confession there was a kind of release, as if he had finished waiting. And perhaps, now it's the turn of the world to catch up with him. Jimin's story isn't just about one singer who hasn't been able to tour. This is a story about much deeper things, about the expectations that come from people who claim to believe, but secretly decide the direction of your life. About freedom that is not just about formal permission, but about the right to choose your own time, and about an artist who chooses to walk in silence not because he is afraid, but because he knows that it is in silence that his words are heard the loudest. Now, the fans are not just waiting. They're moving. Digital petitions have been created in multiple languages. Physical banners began to fill public places in Korea and abroad. In Paris, someone drew a portrait of Jimin with the quote on the wall of a small street of Montmartre. In Tokyo, fan clubs print flyers that are distributed to the public in Harajuku. In Sao Paulo, a giant mural is being worked on, set to the song Alone.